This is Larry Jordan, the host of the Digital Production Buzz. The following interview is an excerpt from a recent program. To hear the entire program, visit digitalproductionbuzz.com. Tim Bajarin is recognized as one of the leading industry consultants, analysts, and futurists covering personal computers and consumer technology. Tim is the president of and principal analyst for Creative Strategies and has served as a consultant to most of the leading hardware and software vendors in the industry, including IBM, Apple, Xerox, Hewlett-Packard, which is also Compaq, Dell, and many others. His articles and/or analyses have appeared in USA Today, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Times, and just about every other leading business and trade publication. I've known of Tim for many, many years and looking forward to our chat. Hello, Tim. Welcome.
How are you?
I am talking to you. I'm standing at attention. I'm having a great time. I'm looking forward to our chat.
I am too.
One of the things that everybody is talking about these days is wearables, which is the subject of your upcoming talk at the Flash Memory Conference in San Jose. What's your take on these new highly mobile devices?
Well, the whole wearable by themselves, what we call standalone wearables like Fitbit and Jawbone, etc., have basically been kind of the precursor of launching what we would call the wearable movement. And at the moment, they're very focused on exercise, steps, heart rate monitors, things of that nature. And in that context, they're actually doing quite well. The other thing that has happened is, of course, Apple has introduced what's known as the Apple Watch. It has a lot of those health wearable monitoring features, but then, of course, it does a lot more, right? It connects to my email, gives me a lot of alerts, and with Watch 2.0, we're going to actually get the first generation of what we would call native apps for the Apple Watch. But where this is most fascinating is it's got the attention of the healthcare industry. And I had an executive from one of the top HMOs in my office not long ago, and he basically clarified the health industry's position on wearables. And, this tracking and, the whole information of our health. And it was interesting because the way he posed it, which was it's better for us to be proactive to help you stay healthy than it is for you to get sick and have to cover your costs when you go to the hospital. And so there's a lot of motivation between the healthcare industry, the tech guys, and then the whole movement to try to keep us healthier. That is why this wearable segment has a lot of legs. And as far as we can tell, we sold over 100 million standalone wearable devices this year. Apple sold quite a few Apple Watches initially, and we expect them to sell close to 20 million in the first 12 months it's on the market. This whole wearable thing is interesting, but it looks like the health connection is why it's going to have legs and grow.
One of the things that our webcast pays attention to is people who are creating content. And I can understand the health relationship to mobile devices, but is there a content that we can pay attention to? Can people actually watch content on a watch or a mobile device like something that small? Or are we just using it for status reports and notifications?
Yeah, watches, the screen is way too small for what I would call video content. You can actually do images and you can do a little bit of video. I actually expect to see a YouTube Apple Watch application that's native that will let you do that. But to be honest with you, those are such tiny screens. Watching video there is going to be tough. Now, having said that, the real big trend is what's going on with smartphones and tablets, and specifically mobile in general, because that's where so much of the content is being targeted. In fact, it's interesting to note that in international markets, China, Japan, especially, and some of these others, when they are using their smartphones, about 75% of it is watching video. And part of it is because they have long commutes. And in Japan, it's interesting. I don't know if you've been to Japan lately, but you happen to be on any of their bullet trains or their trains going into the city, you'll just see people standing there watching their what they call soaps, the equivalent of a soap opera type, video. And the bottom line is, and think about the actual numbers. We're going to sell this year worldwide somewhere around 1.3 to 1.5 billion smartphones that are capable of handling video. And over time, the majority of the phones sold are going to be video capable. In some parts of the market, we still have what we call feature phones, but eventually everybody's going to move to smartphones because they're going to come down in price. So as a vehicle for content, guys creating content, mobile is actually going to be the largest medium for content distribution we've ever had.
I was just reflecting on that. The numbers, 1 point whatever billion, is just mind-boggling because it dwarfs the traditional desktop computer or almost TV sets, it seems to me. And all of a sudden, we have to change the way we're doing content. Wide shots don't work the same way. We've got to learn a new language for creating visual information. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting, too, because we kind of actually had to do this, if you think about it, in the entertainment industry, because for decades, the screen that we had to watch video were gigantic screens in movie theaters, right?
Yep.
And then around the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, the television came into focus. And what happened then? We now had to create content for what was then called the small screen. And it's kind of the same scenario, right? The desktop and laptop was the equivalent of that movie theater big screen where we did video. And now we're having to rethink content for a small screen. I define the watch as a tiny screen. But the majority of this video has to be thought through in the context of basically 4 to maybe 6.5, 7-inch screens at best.
I was reflecting, Tim, back in the 50s when television was starting to steal audience from the theaters. Theaters shifted from the traditional 4:3 aspect ratio, which was what films were shot in mostly before that, to the widescreen format. And I was just wondering if now we need to look at, and the other thing is that television was able to emphasize close-ups in a way that films never did. Television became a close-up media because the screen was smaller. It looks like we need to rethink that whole concept of how we're shooting, because we can get really big close-ups, but on a mobile device, we don't see the same level of detail as we do on a TV set.
No, and you've got to deal with both aspect ratio, and the bigger problem is the screens are actually getting higher resolutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're getting the equivalent of HD, and the next generation, probably 2-3 years from now, is going to be even denser. The idea of getting to 4K on smartphones is probably overkill, but it's still going to get better and deeper. But at that point, you're really rethinking how you shoot. And the other thing about that video switch in general is that the whole concept of how you shoot for a small screen is the same problem they had, in the 50s, because they had to do not only close-ups, but they had to do different angles, and they had to do a lot of different ways to block how they did the cameras. And as you know, the history, of course, there is that in the early days of TVs, they were shot with a single camera, and then Lucy and Desi Arnaz pioneered the 3-camera shot, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then that actually revolutionized the way the videos were shot for the small screen. Now today we do have still, in most cases, we have single shots. The way we're shooting small, these smaller screens. But I think there's going to have to be a lot more creativity in how you do that if you're focusing on that small screen as the actual medium for what you're delivering.
Tim, before we run out of time, I want to mention that you're speaking at the Flash Memory Conference. When are you speaking, and can mere mortals attend?
Well, it is an industry conference. My particular panel, I believe, is on wearables and mobile and wearables and the health industry. And I believe it's the 12th at around 1 p.m. At the Santa Clara Convention Center. But I believe it's an industry event. I don't think it's for the consumer audience, but those in the industry can clearly sign up and attend.
Well, then, for people that would like to learn more about what you're thinking in terms of where the future is headed, where can they go on the web, and what websites do you recommend?
Well, our own site is called techpinions.com, and myself and three of our partners, or four of our partners, put new content in every day, and then there's a subscription area where we really dig deeper on technology and industry trends that runs about 100 a year. But we've got tremendous amount of subscribers who do that because they want to keep in touch and see what's going on in the future. And then, of course, our own personal website for our company is creativestrategies.com.
So that website is on your screen, TechPinions, TechPinions, TechPinions.com. And Tim Bajarin is the president of Creative Strategies and a contributor to TechPinions. Tim, I've enjoyed this a great deal. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.